Good afternoon, everyone. I warmly welcome you to the sixth webinar titled Advanced in Point of Care Vitamin D Testing from Innovation to Clinical Application, brought to you by Wonderful in collaboration with Blue Health Ethiopia. My name is Dr. Meti and I'll be your host for today's session. We are thrilled to have you join us for this webinar. At Wonderful, we are committed to supporting healthcare professionals through innovative diagnostic solutions and continuous educational initiatives. This webinar is part of that commitment, aiming to equip clinicians and laboratory professionals with the knowledge and tools needed to make informed decisions and ultimately improve patient outcomes. Today's focus is on vitamin D testing, an essential tool in patient healthcare. Beyond bone health, vitamin D is closely linked to uh, immunity, chronic disease, and overall well-being. With the growing awareness of its role in clinical practice, this discussion is more timely and valuable than ever. Vitamin D testing continues to play an important role in clinical decision making, and expanding use of point of care testing offers new opportunities to deliver timely and reliable results closer to patients. Today's webinar will focus on the clinical application of POCT vitamin D testing, as well as recent advances in diagnostic solutions supporting this field. Before we start, let me briefly walk you through the agenda for this webinar. We are honored to be joined by our distinguished speaker who brings valuable expertise from his field, followed by a presentation from One for Ethiopia, where we will share insights into our diagnostic solutions. There will be question and answer sessions between each session, and we encourage you to submit your questions through the chat box or question and answer box at any time. At the end, we'll also hear from Blue Health Ethiopia. Finally, there will be a short question session for CEO purposes. Uh, so without further delay, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Professor Gizacho. Professor Gizacho earned his PhD in microbial, cellular, and molecular biology from Addis Ababa University and Master of Science in Diagnostic and Public Health Microbiology and Bachelor of Science in Medical Laboratory Technology. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Microbiology, Immunology, and Parasitology at St. Paul Hospital Millennium College. Professor Gizacho previously served as president and executive director of the Ethiopian Medical Laboratory Association and is a lifetime member of the Ethiopian Public Health Association and Global Outreach contributing member of the American Society for Microbiology. He currently serves as president of the African Federation of Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine AFCC, a certified medical laboratory technologist and clinical laboratory sciences specialist. He has nearly 19 years of experience in laboratory medicine with expertise in quality management system, clinical trials of in vitro diagnosis, and laboratory standardization. He has authored over 26 scientific publications, organized numerous professional training and conferences, and has served as PI or co-PI on research grants. His research interests include molecular epidemiology of infectious disease and diagnostic biomarkers. Today, Professor Gizacho will share his insight on the clinical and practical application of point-of-care testing for vitamin D, including how laboratories and biomedical teams can integrate POCT into their workflow, interpret results, and ensure quality in clinical practice. Professor Gizacho, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Metti, for this generous introduction. Yeah, thank you. So, is it clearly seen? I'm checking.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as previously described by Dr. Metti, today's presentation is the clinical application of point-of-care vitamin D testing. And I'm Gizacho. So this will be the presentation outline. I will be briefly touch on the overview of vitamin D, the role of point-of-care testing, the application of point-of-care testing in the clinical practice. How can we really interpret vitamin D laboratory results, common pitfalls, and then best practices for vitamin D testing. And I will have one case practical scenario, and finally, I can really happy to receive questions. So as a disclaimer, I have no any relevant financial affiliation to disclose. And as mentioned previously, I'm working for St. Paul and the African Federation of Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine. I will mention some brand names by mistake, in fact, not intentionally. I may mention some names in the middle of the discussion, but I have no any disclosure of interest. So as an introduction, we can start from the history of the vitamin D, from discovery of the ancient disease to the modern solution. So the problem was just the rickets. This is a debilitating disease of the impaired bone mineralization in children, leading to skeletal deformities and growth failure. This was the bigger problem during the ancient times. And there were clues for the discoveries. The first one is in 1634, the disease was formally named as rickets. And in 1700, the clinical use of cod liver oil shows curative effect against the rickets. And in 1822, a scientist correlated sunlight deficiency with disease prevalence. And the medical triumph or the discovery is that the synthesis of these clues lead to the knowledge of the vitamin D. And this helps understanding its dual source. That's from the sunlight exposure as well as from the dietary sources. And this allows for the effective prevention and treatment of rickets, making a landmark achievement in a public health medicine. So this was really the history, the very brief history. And today we can really understand the types of rickets induced by alterations in vitamin D metabolism. In vitamin D binding receptors like type 1, in type 2B, in type 3, and the responsible gene mutation can be really understood or can be understandable very efficiently. So what is really vitamin? It's really, vitamin D is not strictly a vitamin, but rather it's a precursor of one of the hormones involved in the maintenance of calcium homeostasis and the regulation of cell proliferation and differentiation, where it has both endocrine and paracrine action. So vitamin D is actually a hormone rather than a vitamin, and it requires to absorb calcium and phosphate from the gut into the bloodstream. And vitamin D is mostly produced in the skin from the precursor cholesterol in response to the sunlight, and is also absorbed from the food that we eat. So the liver and the kidney converts vitamin D into the active form of the hormone, which is called calcitriol. That's 1,25-dihydroxyl vitamin D. So vitamin D is just, we can say, more than a bone vitamin. It's naturally a fat-soluble vitamin, and it has two major forms relevant to humans. The first one is that D2. This is ergocalciferol, and we can get this from plants and fungi, that including mushroom. And vitamin D3 is a cholecalciferol, and we can get from animal source. That's fatty acids, fish, fortified milk, and synthesized in the skin via the ultraviolet light type B. So when we think of vitamin B, it has these two forms shared metabolic pathway, the same metabolic pathway, and both follows similar hepatic and renal hydroxylation, a step where it gets active, changed to in its active form. And it can be also converted in the liver to 25-hydroxyl vitamin D. This is the major circulatory biomarker, and the key differences in origin is D2 is primarily exogenous. We can get it from diet or from supplements, and D3 is from both sunlight exposure. As I said earlier, that the sunlight exposure means that to activate the precursor cholesterol in the skin. And we can get also vitamin D3 from the diet. So this is really to show you from where we can get vitamin D and the possibility of the assessment, the importance of the assessment of vitamin D from different sources, and we can also identify the factors that will lead to inappropriate absorption of vitamin D. And finally, when an individual gets vitamin D deficiency, there will be an effector organ. There will be really an expression in the effector organ, in the heart, in the musculoskeletal, and then so on. So there are few foods that are rich sources for vitamin D, and it is generally accepted that for people with inadequate exposure to sunlight, like young children and housebound elderlies, so supplementation are necessary to maintain a status, and excessively high intake of vitamin D are associated with hypercalcemia and calcinosis also. So be careful of just getting or prescribing supplements to our patients. So vitamin D obtained from the sun exposure, food, and supplements is biologically inert. It's not active and must be changed or undergo to hydroxylation in the body for activation. And the first hydroxylation is which occurs in the liver, converts vitamin D to 25-hydroxyl vitamin D, also known as calcidinol. So the second hydroxylation occurs primarily in the kidney and forms the physiologically active 1,25-hydroxyl vitamin D, and this is also known as calcitriol. So vitamin D promotes calcium absorption in the gut and maintains adequate serum calcium and phosphate concentration to enable normal bone mineralization and prevents hypocalcemia tetani. This is hypocalcemia tetani is an involuntary contraction of the muscle, leading to cramps and then spasms. So it's also needed for bone growth and bone remodeling by osteoblasts and osteoclasts. So without sufficient vitamin D, bone can become really thin, it can be brittle or mishap. Vitamin deficiency prevents rickets in children and osteomalacia in adults. So together with the calcium as well as the vitamin D also helps protect older adults from osteoporosis. So vitamin D has other roles in the body, including reduction of inflammatory as well as modulation of such processes as cell growth, neuromuscular and immune function, and glucose metabolism. And many genes encoding proteins that regulate cell proliferations, differentiation, and apoptosis are modulated partly by vitamin D. And usually many tissues have vitamin D receptor, and some convert 25-hydroxyl to the active form of 1,25-hydroxyl vitamin D2. So the other most important part is vitamin D and then the breastfeeding. We can ask a question like, do infants get enough vitamin D from breast milk? And the answer is definitely no, because breast milk alone does not provide infant with enough vitamin D. So all children need vitamin D at the beginning of just shortly after birth, and children younger than 12 months all need to take really 400 international units of vitamin D each day, and children between 12 to 24 months all need to take 600 international units of vitamin D each day as a supplement. When we see the biochemical structure and the stability of vitamin D, so there are structural differences like vitamin D2 has additional methyl group and double bond in the side chain at the C2023, and D3 has a saturated side chain rather. So when we see the metabolic stability, the 25 hydroxyl vitamin D, that's D3, has a longer half-life. That's approximately 15.1 days versus the 25 hydroxide D2, that's 13.9 days. This may affect the duration of the biological activity, even including in the specimen that we draw for vitamin D testing and measurement. When we see the binding activity, both can bind really to vitamin D binding protein in the circulation, and however, vitamin D3 may have slightly higher affinity for vitamin D binding protein and the vitamin D receptor. So D3 has a relatively higher affinity. When we see the bioactivity and the potency, both forms of vitamin D can be converted to active form. That's 125 hydroxyl D2, and D3 may be more potent in raising and sustaining the total 25 hydroxyl vitamin D levels. So some stress suggests that D3 is more effective in improving bone health and immune function over D2. For research and clinical use, most guidelines do not really distinguish D2 and D3 for deficiency treatment. This will be really most of the drawbacks in the diagnostic platforms with related to vitamin D measurement. However, studies focusing on free or bioavailable 25 hydroxyl vitamin D may need to consider differences in vitamin D binding proteins. We need to consider even the binding proteins to really measure or detect the vitamin D3 or vitamin D2. So the takeaway for the researchers in these forms of D2 and D3 is there should be a choice of biomarker. The total for which we assume really, we assume to measure. The total one, the free, the bioavailable 25 hydroxyl depends on the research questions, and we need to consider when we see such variability. The first one is the population, age, ethnicity, the health status of the particular patient or a participant should be considered, and we need to also consider the assay methodology, the point of care test, the modalities, the liquid chromatography or the mass the chromatography preferred or D2 distinction, which method can help us distinguish the forms of vitamin D in a particular participant. And the other one is the seasonal variation and supplementation type that is required for D2 or D3. Which one to choose needs to be considered. The other section is the clinical application, and I wanted to mention a few key physiological roles of the vitamin. The first one is the calcium homeostasis. Vitamin D is really helpful in bone health and the calcium homeostasis. So vitamin D is essential for maintaining calcium and phosphate balance. It enhances intestinal calcium absorption from really as low as 10 to 15% to as high as 30 to 40% by upregulating the calcium channel. So the calcium channel and the calcium binding protein and the calcium pump will be really upregulated to maintain this homeostasis. So the other one is vitamin D promotes calcium reabsorption in the kidneys and metabolizes calcium from bone when it's required. And the critical for bone mineralization that prevents rickets in children and osteomalacia in adults and osteoporosis older adults too. So vitamin D is really very much helpful in lots of really activities and mechanisms that happen in our body. So the other one is the immune system modulation. So vitamin D receptors are present in immune cells like macrophages, T cells, and antigen presenting cells like dendritic cells. So this enhances innate immunity by stimulating cathelicidin production. This is an antimicrobial peptide property, and this regulates adaptive immunity again by suppressing pro-inflammatory cytokine like interleukin-2, interferon gamma, interleukin-12, 17, and also vitamin D promotes Treg cells activity, and vitamin D may help also reduce risk of autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis and type 1 diabetes, and studied for its role in respiratory infection, including the COVID-19. As you know, when there is an infection, there will be a cytokine before the attachment of just after the attachment of the particular microorganism into the host cells, there will be a release of different cytokine and modulation of cytokine chemokine taxis. So the other is there will be also non-classical roles and systemic effects like cardiovascular health when it influences blood pressure, vascular function, and inflammation through supplementation. Benefits are just unclear in fact, but there will be also muscle function and deficiency linked to muscle weakness. Deficiency of vitamin D shows really muscle weakness and falls in elderly, and neurological effects also, and metabolic regulations and pregnancy and development. This is critical for fetal skeletal development and maternal health. The other one is the cellular regulation and gene expression. As you know that vitamin D acts via vitamin D receptor, which binds to vitamin D response elements in DNA. So this regulates gene involved in cell proliferation, differentiation in apoptosis, and barrier function in skin, gut, respiratory epithelium, and it can also serve as an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory pathway. In skins, it regulates the keratinocytes growth and is used topically to treat psoriasis, and many inhibits cancer cell growth in colon, may inhibit, like vitamin D also help to just inhibit the cancer cell growth in colon, breast and prostate cancer, as shown by different models. There are also hypervitaminosis and vitamin D toxication. So this, if there is a hypervitamin D in our body, there are unwell signs and symptoms shown by the patient, like confusion and so on. So care must be taken while we provide vitamin D supplementation and treatment. So when we see the role of the vitamin D point of care testing, As you know, point of care testing is evolving in a larger mass. So point of care testing for vitamin D allows for the rapid measurement of vitamin D level in settings outside the conventional lab, a central lab. So unlike conventional methods such as liquid chromatography related to vitamin D and tandem mass spectrometry or immunoassay, point of care testing devices like the fine care vitamin D tests are really designed for use in clinics, in pharmacies, in general practice office, even in field settings, and in a small lab that may not really launch a big diagnostic modalities for it. So this makes vitamin D point of care testing particularly valuable for screening, monitoring, and rapid clinical decision making in vitamin D deficiency management. So the advantage in workflow is one, there will be speed and efficiency. Not there will be. There is an evident uh, uh, phenomenon that will really attain in good speed and efficiency. So results are available within minutes compared to hours or days in central labs. And it will reduce also patient waiting time and enables immediate consultation. The second is simplified process. One step, but most of the point of care tests, including point of care vitamin D test platforms, do have one step mixing of sample and buffer versus multiple step reconstitution. And there is no pipetting required, making it accessible in non-laboratory settings. And we can really see also minimal sampling, sample handling. It requires point of care tests usually require small blood volume. We can take from finger prick that will reduce discomfort, especially in pediatrics, in elderly, or in patients who have difficult to draw the venous sample specimen. The other one is it eliminates the need for sample transport, refrigeration, and also complex logistics related to storage and so on. So point of care testing also reduce risk of error. Mono test design prevents cross-contamination compared to multi-use extraction buffers in some laboratory assays, and it can also lower operator dependency due to simplified protocols. There is always, within the lab, there is always an observer variation from the diagnosticians. The other one is it enables for immediate clinical actions. So enables same visit diagnosis and treatment planning, improving patient compliance and follow-up. So when point of care testing is preferred over a central lab testing, one can question really such as. So point of care testing is particularly advantageous in the following scenarios. The first one is in the primary and general practice, like when rapid screening is needed during routine visits, and it's also suitable for non-laboratory settings like pharmacies, in clinician offices, and for epidemiological survey in also. And the second is pediatric and geriatric population. So finger stick sampling is less invasive and more feasible than venous draws. And it's also important for infants, children, and elderly who may have difficulty with venous blood collection. The other is like the third is remote or resource limited settings. We can transportation is impractical and it's useful It's useful in field studies, community health programs, and renal rural clinics. And also it's also useful in high throughput screening campaign, like such as public health initiatives for at-risk groups like office workers, pregnant women, dark-skinned individuals, and so on. And point-of-care testing allow for decentralized, large-scale testing without the creating any backlog. The other one is when we need urgent clinical decision, when vitamin D status is needed quickly to guide supplementation, or especially in symptomatic patients who may manifest like fatigue, bone pain, and muscle weakness. And we can also use point-of-care testing, vitamin D point-of-care testing for follow-up of monitoring, like for patients on vitamin D supplementation, allowing provider to adjust dose without any conventional or any central lab result delays. The other one is we can really use also for considerations for interpretation, and we can really take consideration for interpretation and caution. So point of care testing immunoassay can show bias and variability compared to the liquid chromatography or mass chroma. However, for clinical screening and management, point of care test offers a practical balance of speed, cost, and accessibility. It is as simple as such, really. So point of care test is not ideal for research requiring high precision, example, epimer separation or genotype specific vitamin D binding protein analysis, but it is highly suitable for protein clinical assessment. In conclusion, with regard to vitamin D point of care testing, I can say this one. Okay, vitamin D point of care testing, such as the platform in a fine care test, play a critical role in decentralized patient-centered care. So it streamlines workflow, reduces turnaround time, and expands testing access, especially in non-lab settings and for vulnerable population. And as a concluding remark with this, with regard to this point of care testing, while the central lab testing remains the gold standard for research and complex cases, point of care vitamin D testing is preferred when speed, simplicity, point of care convenience are really prioritized. If the clinicians plan such a patient-centered convenience, I think we can really definitely use point of care testing modalities. So the summary of vitamin D measurement, like in research and like this, we can say that the common biomarker could be the total 25 hydroxyl vitamin D, and the sum of the 25 hydroxyl vitamin D2 and D3, 25 hydroxyl D3 should be both the biomarkers. So this could be measured through a vitamin D point of care testing, which accelerates patient-centered care. And we can also do in a conventional liquid chromatography, like this is a gold standard, can distinguish D2 versus D3. And we can also use immunoassay, but cannot separate D2 and D3 forms and may cross-react with other metabolites. So when we see the epidemiological relevance, many population-based studies showed approximately like 19-20% had detectable 25 hydroxyl vitamin D and higher D2 levels seen in older adults which is greater than 60 years. So there is always a consideration for research like immunoassay may introduce biases, and liquid chromatography can allow a precise quantification to resolve the epimer and so on. This graph shows that really we can use for research like such radioimmunoassay, chemiluminescence and HPLC, and so the other most important part is the clinical application of vitamin D in health and disease. From the previous times, I think research in vitamin D is becoming increasing, as you see in the graph, and there is always a definition of vitamin D deficiency in children. So we can really see from different institutions and from the pediatric population, from the endocrine society, and so on. So some prefers less than 20, some other prefers less than 30 international unit per ml per liter of vitamin D concentrations. So vitamin D is really helpful to assess really in fat metabolism, in anticonvulsant use, in chronic kidney disease, which leads to inability to make sufficient 125 dihydroxy vitamin D, which has a direct effect on inhibiting parathyroid hormone expression. And in obesity, as you know, that most of the obese people are prone to be vitamin D deficient, and since they have lower 25 times D levels. So problems with absorption, yeah, we can really use to assess few children are born with or developed medical conditions that affect the way their bodies absorb vitamin. Some examples we can mention like celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, cystic fibrosis, and kidney problems. These do have really conditions that affect vitamin D absorption from the intestine. So the other application in health and diseases in musculoskeletal effect of vitamin D. This is a detrimental effect of vitamin D deficiency on musculoskeletal system, where the first visible mode of action that was attributed to vitamin D, like that's the rickets in children. And the other one is vitamin D in bone health. Severe vitamin D deficiency may cause rickets in infants or children, and osteomalacia in adults. And in diabetes also, several studies demonstrated a link between vitamin D level and diabetes. This is revealed higher frequency of vitamin D deficiency in patients with type 1 diabetes compared with the healthy individuals. So vitamin D and the immune system, vitamin D receptors are present all over the body, including the antigen present cells, as I mentioned earlier, with no direct effect on innate and both adaptive immunity. So there is an association between vitamin D deficiency and TB prevalence or TB infection, and it was reported also the ultraviolet radiation had beneficial effect on TB therapy and the like. So in the respiratory tract infections, however, there is an inverse association between the cord blood vitamin D level and the risk of developing upper respiratory tract infection by month 3 and wheezing by at 15 months of age. Newborns with vitamin D less than 20 nanogram per ml had a 6-fold higher risk of respiratory syncytial virus related to bronchitis at year 1 old compared with those of vitamin D greater than 30 nanogram per ml. So this is really much relevant in the utilization of vitamin D. The other one is in asthma. the maternal vitamin D in the intake during pregnancy may be associated with the children's risk developing within episode thereafter. Okay, so this is an inverse. In respiratory infections, there will be an inverse relation. The other one is vitamin D and other systemic effects. So observational studies demonstrated the association between vitamin D deficiency and the risk of hypertension or cardiovascular events, higher incidence of cancer, more musculoskeletal pain and migraine, and neuropsychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, dementia, or depression is really. However, current evidence for vitamin D intervention in treating or in preventing these diseases is lacking, but there is an evidence and interventions are really lacking. So vitamin D need in pregnancy and lactation. So there are several studies indicated the association between maternal vitamin D deficiency and an increased risk of preeclampsia, gastrointestinal diabetes mellitus, preterm birth, and impaired fetal bone formation. So we need to take care of interpretation of the vitamin D, I think, laboratory results. If these are the evidence that I mentioned, we need to really use with due caution. So the primary marker should be the serum 25 hydroxyl vitamin D, which reflects the body store and dietary sunlight exposure. Both we can get really both forms of vitamin D as such. So when we say deficiency, it could be less than 20 nanomole per liter in children and less than 10 to 20 nanomole in adults with osteomalacia. When we say insufficiency, this is deficiency, but when we say insufficiency, that one may have insufficient vitamin D level, this from 20 to 50 nanomole per liter in adults. And when we say adequate, one must have 50 to 100 nanomole per liter, but there will be a seasonal variation to interpret this concentration as an adequate. So risk of hypercalcemia and hypervitaminosis D is greater than 400 nanomole per liter can be considered as. So the active hormone, the serum 125 dihydroxyl vitamin D, that's calcitriol, is tightly regulated and not used to assess nutritional status. So the normal range for this is 0.038 to 0.144 and elevated in primarily hyperparathyroidism, chronic renal failure, if not suppressed, and in some lymphomas there will be an elevation of this active form of vitamin D, and low in renal failure, in hypothyroidism, vitamin D dependent rickets, that is really low in such conditions. So the key considerations for interpretation is there will be a seasonal variation and low in winter at high altitude, and renal functions like and parathyroid hormone, calcium, and phosphate should be evaluated concurrently, and liver disease or genetic variants may affect also the vitamin D concentration, and assay must really, if possible, need to really distinguish the D2 form and D3 cholesterol or vitamin D forms. So there are emerging biomarkers like the free bioavailable 25 hydroxyl vitamin D. This may be irrelevant in pregnancy, during liver and kidney diseases, or in immune studies. And vitamin D binding proteins also must be measured with polyclonal ELISA or liquid chromatography assays, but we need to avoid an outdated monoclonal assays and 3-epimer 25-hydroxyl vitamin D. This is higher in infantis and can interfere with total 25-hydroxyl vitamin D if not separated in conventional diagnostic modalities. So there is a recommendation for this, and for most clinical purposes, the total 25-hydroxyl vitamin D is sufficient. And in special population or for research purpose, we can consider the free 25-hydroxyl vitamin D binding protein, or 24-25-hydroxyl vitamin D2 forms for deeper analysis and insights. And always we need to note the assay methods, the seasonal draw, and the population context when interpreting such results. We Ethiopians, we feel that as most of our colleagues somewhere in the world know that we claim that we are living in a certain months of sunshine, but lots of population in Ethiopia is quite deficient in vitamin D level. We need to really, in fact, understand the prevalence, how it's prevalent really must be investigated in the future. So the common pitfalls and best practices in vitamin D testing will include, it's not limited to this, but I crafted this one. The common pitfalls is, the first one is incorrect marker selection. That is using 125-hydroxyl vitamin D, that's calcitriol, instead of the 25-hydroxyl vitamin D, calcidiol, okay, to assess nutritional status, as calcitriol is regulated and often normal or elevated in deficiency. So the second one is ignoring seasonal variation. We need to levels in temperate climates are significantly lower in winter. So a single low reading may not reflect the chronic deficiency. The other one is missing comorbid conditions. As I mentioned, for example, not considering renal impairment, liver diseases, where the vitamin D could be converted into its active form in the liver as well as in kidneys. And even if we forget to associate with malabsorption or drugs like anticonvulsants, so that alter metabolism or binding. So we need to give due attention in considering all these aspects. The other is overlooking the assay variability. There is always difference between assays, between point of care testing, immunoassays, and the gold standard liquid chromatography assays can reflect really different results. So lack of standardization may lead to inconsistent interpretation for research and for conventional really central lab methods. So misinterpreting in the context of inflammation, for example, in critical illness or inflammation, the total 25-hydroxyl vitamin D may be low due to reduced binding protein, but free fractions may be adequate. So we need to really give due attention based on the patient's condition. What will be the best practice to really avert those pitfalls? So the first could be test the total, that's the 25-hydroxyl vitamin D for nutritional status, check parathyroid, calcium, and phosphate together also to help assess the physiological impact and to distinguish the primary versus the secondary causes, and use the seasonal adjusted reference to interpret those vitamin D levels in different seasons and confirm with repeated testing if clinical uncertainty is unavoidable. If there are clinicians who are uncertain on these results, we need to really use a triplicate analysis. Consider for free 25-hydroxyl vitamin D in special cases, useful in pregnancy and liver diseases or those with conditions affecting the binding proteins. And the other one is always we need to ensure assay consistency. Use the same lab method for serial monitoring to reduce variability. So, having said this, there is one, I think, clinical scenario. Yeah, we can see this one. Vitamin D deficiency with renal impairment, we can take that. Patients, the patient presentation is a 65 years old female with stage 3 chronic kidney disease, like EGFR is 40 milliliter per minute, 1.73 meters squared, presents with persistent fatigue and muscle weakness. So the routine lab shows serum 25-hydroxyl vitamin D, that's 22 nanomole per liter. This is low, we can say. Serum 125-hydroxyl vitamin D, this is 0.02 nanomole per liter. We can say this is low. And parathyroid hormone, that's 150 picogram per milliliter. This is elevated. The calcium, 2.1 millimole per liter. This is low, normal. And phosphate, 1.5 millimole per liter. This could be normal. So care must be taken while we interpret. We can interpret like 25-hydroxyl vitamin D indicates vitamin D insufficiency. 125 hydroxyl vitamin D is low, despite low 25 hydroxyl vitamin D suggests impaired renal 1-alpha hydroxylase activity. This is an enzyme that can convert 25 hydroxyl vitamin D into its active form due to the chronic kidney diseases. So there's an elevated PTH confirms secondary hyperparathyroidism due to low calcitrol. So the common pitfall with this result, the case presentation and the interpretation is there is a common pitfall like assuming 25-hydroxyl vitamin D alone is sufficient. If we are sure that this is sufficient, this could be one common pitfall, because low 25-hydroxyl vitamin D alone does not explain the full picture. It needs calcitrol and then PTH in renal diseases. The second one is missing renal metabolism defect, that's in chronic kidney disease. The ability to convert 25-hydroxyl vitamin D into its active form reduced. So the 25-hydroxyl vitamin D may not correlate with the symptom. And the third pitfall is misguided supplementation. This will lead to misguided. So giving only cholesterol, cholecalciferol, that's D3, may not really correct the calcitrol deficiency, active vitamin D calcitrol or 1-alpha calcitrol may be needed. So the best practice approach could be treatment with active vitamin D, and the other one is monitoring calcium, phosphate, and parathyroid closely, and rechecking the 25-hydroxyl vitamin D after 3 months of supplementation to ensure normal deficiency is really need to be really granted. So the takeaway, the key takeaway is just in renal impairment, vitamin D status requires a 2-level assessment. That's nutritional and functional. It should be functionally, we can really assess the 125 hydroxyl vitamin D plus parathyroid. And for nutritional assessment, we need to use 25 hydroxyl D. So who really need supplement? As I mentioned, Darzky mothers vitamin D deficiency during pregnancy, northern latitude population who live premature births, medications, patients on medication, exclusive breastfeeding, and so on. And here are the doses, the calcium, the recommended calcium dietary allowance, and the upper intake level, and vitamin D recommended dietary allowance, and the upper intake level. All these could be really relevant, and strategies for vitamin D supplementation, nutritional rickets could also be this one. Yeah, from 0 to 12 months, we can really provide 2,000 international units per day for 6 to 12 weeks, and they maintain with 400 international units. Like this. So this is age dependent, and based on the age, we can provide this supplementation. When we see the Ethiopian context, I think, as I said earlier, despite we are living in a certain months of sunshine, there are vitamin D deficiencies. One known publications is just vitamin D level in patients presenting with non-specific neuromuscular pain and fatigue in Ethiopia. And this is really an important evidence. And the other one is vitamin D deficiency among smear-positive pulmonary tuberculosis patients and their tuberculosis negative household families or contacts in northwest Ethiopia. This is the case control study. And the other one is vitamin D insufficiency in a sunshine sufficient area. This is in southern Ethiopia. And the conclusion is vitamin D insufficiency is a serious problem in the study population, and living near the equator does not assure adequate vitamin D status. So we need to really ensure that we have adequate really precursors in our skin, and so on. As a summary note or conclusion, one of the reason vitamin D was a puzzle to scientists was that it was really initially misidentified as erythrovitamin. So it's rather a hormonal activity. So the second one is bioactive vitamin D is the most common steroidal hormone, and it plays a very prominent role in many biological processes in human. And vitamin D measurement method should ideally measure D2 and D3 metabolites equally. And both D2 and D3 detections simultaneously also aid in monitoring therapy, and further standardization of methods is necessary. And this is an assignment for both diagnostic industries and some other funders. Otherwise, point of care testing is very much involved, and also supporting the diagnostic modality based on a patient preference setting, based on time, and then so on. It's affordable, accessible, and the likes. So finally, I would like to really thank the wonderful biotech, and this is Racing for Life. I like the motto of the wonderful, and all participants and partners, and specifically Dr. Mehdi and Gracia, who really invited me to speak in this end. I wanted to mention one statement like, this is said by Alan Murex. This is the director of the Murex Foundation, and whose father is a colleague of the Lewis Pasteur. Just he said that without diagnostics, medicine would be applied. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that informative and insightful presentation. We really appreciate your clear explanation of the clinical relevance and also the practical application of the point of care testing, vitamin D testing. Thank you. So we will now take a few minutes for question and discussion related to this session. If you have any question, please feel free to drop your questions through the chat box or the question and answer session box, and we'll answer them. Okay, we have one question from Nahum. So the question is the point of care testing already available for use in Ethiopia?
Yes. Yeah, can I answer it?
Yes, of course.
Yes, Nahum, thank you for your question. And yeah, tests for vitamin D measurement and the detection is available in a point of care format. I think one, sustainable supplier is wonderful. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nahum. Is there any more question? Anyone who has questions, please. Okay, we have one question from Yadera. Which treatment modality is preferable? STOS or other one?
Yeah, I think the supplementation is more important, both in the form of nutritional supplement and then also in the form of therapeutic supplement. So different modalities are just available, but two forms of supplementation is important.
Okay, another question is how calcidin dose can be calculated for children?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Yeah, in fact, I may not really reflect the exact dose calculation, but societies do have a reference value. There is a set which is already an established reference value, and the supplementation based on the age from different societies, as I mentioned. So usually in Ethiopia, either we are just adopting those ranges or values, those values directly from the endocrine society or from other societies. So we need to use based on the age rather than based on the weight and so on calculation. So the dose is calculated based on the age frame from 0 to 6 months, from 6 to something like that. If you are more interested in this, we can provide age-specific ranges. But I have in the PowerPoint too.
Okay. So another question is from Abdisa. Which laboratory methods are commonly found in our country?
Yes, I think the point of care testing modalities are available in Ethiopia, but for research purpose, there are also liquid chromatography assays in research institutes like in Ethiopian Public Health Institute. I'm very much familiar that there is a liquid chromatography assay in EPHI, Ethiopian Public Health Institute. Otherwise, in most of the clinics, it was specifically in private clinics. There is a point of care testing modalities, while in public hospitals, there is no vitamin D testing. It is really considered as luxury in most of the public institutions. Testing for vitamin D is considered as a luxury.
Okay, let's take one last question from Fizu. He says this was a great presentation, and the question is, in your opinion, how can artificial intelligence be integrated into point of care vitamin D testing to improve result accuracy, quality control, and clinical decision making? And is there any integrations of AI in POCT of vitamin D?
Perfect. Yeah, AI is becoming really the most powerful tool, and so long as we do have really a study, if we have a data to train for the AI platforms, we need to in fact select the most suitable AI for data accumulation and then selection for vitamin D measurement, QC, and so on. Yeah, usually for lab methods, including the quality control and so on, we are not very far from robotics and artificial intelligence. So for the last many years, even if we are not utilizing specifically AI, but we are utilizing machine learning and robotics. So this will be really the future. There should be an accumulated of big data, and using this big data, we can train the most suitable AI platform, and we can utilize in the future.
Okay, so one last question. Do we need specific reference rate for Ethiopia? Because most of our urban population has vitamin D deficiencies. Since the primary source of vitamin D is sunlight, beside melanin effect, is it really right to evaluate our population vitamin D by international reference?
Definitely. Thank you. Who asked this question? Can you tell me the name?
Yes, Mohammed.
Muhammad, thank you. This is a
Yeah.
nice question, and then definitely I can say yes. We need to really have established our own reference ranges, not only for vitamin D, but also for different inflammatory markers like for CRP and so on. And even we are working on establishing different reference ranges on cell counts like WBC and so on. So certain populations do have their own reference ranges based on the geographic variation and so on. So vitamin D is not exceptional, and this must be really looked into a study or an intervention cohort to really know. Basically, even we are not really exact knowing the prevalence of vitamin D deficiency in Ethiopia. The second is we need to set a reference value for Ethiopians, because the precursor 7 the hydroxycholesterol is in the skin. Despite having 13 months of sunshine, I think we need to look into the mechanisms and metabolisms why this precursor cholesterol cannot be hydrolyzed and metabolized into a functional and active form of vitamin D forms. In fact, there are more than 50 metabolites and different forms of vitamins. But these two and the other three are important and can be analyzed with today's laboratory methods. So I can definitely agree with your claims.
Okay, that would be it for the question and answer session. So if any one of you guys have any more questions, please drop it in the chat box or the question and answer box, and Professor will answer it there. So thank you everyone for participating in this question, and thank you, Professor, for the answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitty. Thank you, Dr. Mitty.
Okay. So we will now move on to the next part of our webinar. At this point, I would like to take a few minutes to present on behalf of Wonderful Ethiopia. So I'll share my screen.
I'll stop sharing mine.
I think everyone can see my screen. Again, my name is Dr. Miti. I'm a product specialist working at Wonderful Ethiopia. Today's presentation will focus on advancing vitamin D testing and introducing a new generation of diagnostic solutions. So coming to vitamin D testing, so this was already mentioned by Professor, but to say a few things. Why do we test vitamin D? One is to detect deficiency, to catch problems early before any symptoms appear, and also to guide supplementation. This will guide us to take the right dose and to not give too much or not too little, and also to track progress. We see if the supplements or lifestyle changes are working, and also to monitor any high risk groups like women, pregnant women, elderly, and chronic disease patients. So coming to Wonderful Fine Care point of care testing vitamin D test. These are our machines, which is called Fine Care. It's a point of care testing machine. The technology it uses is fluorescence immunoassay or FIA, and it has a quantitative result. It provides a precise numerical value. As you can see, it's portable and it's also easy to use. It has broad taste menu of around 59 items. And regarding our specific taste on vitamin D, it is a one-step method, which is a one-step sample and buffer only mixing, and the result is uh, only 10 minutes, and it uses 15 microliter sample volume, and it can be stored at room temperature of 4 to 30 degrees Celsius, and it uses a whole blood, plasma, and serum sampling. So the type A vitamin D reagent kit, which was previously introduced in the market, uses pipette tip, but the type B, which is the new reagent which is introduced recently, can be used from the fingertip, so it doesn't have to use a pipette. So the methodology is a small molecule sandwich detection technology, and the linearity range is 5 to 100 nanogram per ml. And the sample type, like I mentioned earlier, it uses whole blood, serum, plasma, and finger stick blood, and it uses 50 microliter of this sample. And the reaction time is 10 minutes, and it's also applicable on all of our fine care machines that are currently available. So coming to a comparison of the previous and the current one is the previous one had a complicated step, and it has a long reaction time and also a limited sample types. Previously, the whole blood and finger stick blood sample was not available, but with the current one, it supports the finger stick blood sample and also the whole blood, and the result is within 10 minutes. So the type A and the type B difference is, like I mentioned earlier, is the pipette is necessary for type A. This can be suitable for professional settings like laboratory, hospital, clinic, and health center. For the type B, without the pipette, it only supports finger stick, and which is suitable for non-laboratory settings, and also which may not require equipped with pipette, such as pediatric patients. So regarding the new vitamin D validation in Iraq, over 1,000 vitamin D tests were consumed in the validation, which lasted a whole week. And this validation showed the correlation rate between Roche and our Fine Care vitamin D, which is as high as 0.9, and the CV is under 10% for all concentration range. And also the Fine Care vitamin D and Afias vitamin D were compared with Roche together, and the Fine Care vitamin D is proved to have a better correlation rate with Roche. So the validation also was done on 4 different countries like Pakistan, Myanmar, Azerbaijan, and Jordan, and you can see the correlation rate, which is more than 0.9, like I mentioned earlier. So coming to the key benefits and features of our equipment and also the reagent, one is cost effective and also easily accessible, and the workflow is extremely simple and uses a very small sample volume, and we can use it in a high frequency scenario use, and the result we can get instantly, and it uses multiple sample compatibility, and it uses also monotest design. Coming to our other equipment, which is called Wonderful Acre, it's a point of care tasting CLIA technology. So we have 3 machines currently. The two of these machines are currently in use in Ethiopia, the Acre 8 and the Acre 90. So the Acre 8 has 6 channels and can with 36 tastes per hour, and the Acre 90 is 16 channels with 2 modules and 96 tastes per hour, and both are flexible choices for different users, like the high-end users or medium end users. So the operation is the sample of the first one is the sample pipetting. Uses a manual pipetting for sample. 1 to 6 samples can be performed each run. The step 2 is the reagent loading. We load the reagent rack into the chamber. And also the step 3 is to touch the start. It is simple one touch on the LCD screening, and it will start automatically. And the step 4 is result printing. So the use is very easy. So the vitamin D parameter on this machine is the principal uses is enzyme catalyzed chemiluminescence, and the separation is nanomagnetic particles. The assay time is the result time is 20 minutes. We can get the result within 20 minutes. And the shelf life of the reagent is 12 months, and the storage condition is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So the vitamin D, the Acre vitamin D has passed the DCAS, the vitamin D external quality assessment scheme. So it has passed this. So coming to the application scenarios, we can use vitamin D in high demand clinical groups like endocrinology, wellness management institutions, obstetrics, postpartum recovery centers, pediatrics, geriatrics, or orthopedics. We can use our vitamin D in all of these high demand clinical groups. So currently we have installed more than 2,000 Fine Care machines across all corners of Ethiopia, and around 70 machines has been installed of Acre, and we have recommendation letters from different end users currently using our vitamin D both on Fine Care and also on Acre. So coming to company overview, let me briefly introduce our company. So it has been 30 plus years. Wonderful has been in the POCT business for 30 plus years, focusing on research and development, manufacturing, sales, and service of rapid diagnostic reagent and equipment, and also has installed more than 100,000 units of Fine Care worldwide, and also over 1 million rapid tests was distributed annually. We have 3,000 employees worldwide, 20 plus subsidiaries. We were listed on Shenzhen Stock Exchange in 2015, and we provide service for over 150 countries and regions. So coming to the international quality management system, we have a lot of certificates from CE, WHO, FDA. So we've got many certificates from these institutions. So coming to Wonderful Ethiopia, Wonderful Ethiopia is a proud member of the Wonderful Biotech family, a global leader in point of care testing. And it's established in 2012 and registered with the Ethiopian Food and Drug Authority as a medical equipment manufacturer. We have a local collaboration. We work with local suppliers to deliver high quality medical equipment to healthcare facilities across Ethiopia. So these are our products currently found in Ethiopia. The rapid test kits, immunoassay, which is the fine care, blood gas analyzer, point of care testing, CLIA, which is Acre. And also recently coming equipments are the immunohistochemistry, molecular, and HPLC, which does hemoglobin A1C. So as I mentioned, you can find our fine care machines on almost every health facilities, and also we have our CLIA machine installed, installation of 70 units. So coming to Wonderful Ethiopia in action, so these are our activities over the years. So we do academic exchanges, and also we give training to our agents and end users also. And we have more than 200 top end users currently listed. And we also participate in CSR activities. We recently gave free hemoglobin A1C test at Ministry of Health and also Ethiopian Diabetic Association. And the fifth picture is our donation, which we gave 1,000 COVID-19 test donation to Ministry of Health in 2020. And we also participate in different health associations. So we have our footprints, like I mentioned, on every corner of Ethiopia, mainly on Addis Ababa, Hawassa, Dreda, Jijjiga, Harar, Arba Minch, Walaita, Jimma, and Mekelle. And we also work with health bureaus, local health facilities, doctors, association, and suppliers. So coming to our technologies, we have around 9 line of technologies: the immunocolloidal God platform, which is the rapid test kits, the immunofluorescence, fine care, electrochemistry, the blood gas analyzer, chemiluminescence, which is the Acre, molecular, HPLC, pathology, biological raw material, and instrument platform. So these are just the pictures of our product lines. So vitamin D testing is an essential for early risk assessment, clinical decision making, and long-term patient monitoring. So with Wonderful Fine Care POCT and Acre Vitamin D, healthcare providers can benefit from rapid quantitative results, a simple one-step workflow, a flexible sample options, enabling timely decision beyond the traditional laboratory. Wonderful supports implementation through local training, technical support, and reliable after-sales service. So we invite healthcare facilities and also partners to explore integrating POCT vitamin D testing into routine practice to improve efficiency and patient care. So this is our slogan, Racing for Life. Each minute we are racing for life. So if you have any questions regarding our reagents and how you can get the POCT equipment or any questions, you can contact us on this address. And if you have also any questions regarding the presentation, you can put it on the chat box and we'll answer the questions. So in the meantime, let's take a brief moment to hear from our valued partners. It's Blue Health Ethiopia. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Iheno, a representative from the organization who will share a few words with us. Dr. Iheno.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mati, and also the Professor Gzacho for taking the time to present such a wonderful webinar. We also would love to thank Wonderful Ethiopia for continuously presenting on our platform, and to all the participants who joined today's 132nd Blue Hills virtual seminar. So to say a few things about Blue Hills Ethiopia. Blue Hills Ethiopia is a medical company dedicated to enhancing emergency response, professional healthcare education, and community health outcomes in Ethiopia. Through our Darash mobile app and advanced continuous professional development, which is the Blue Hills virtual seminar, we address critical gaps in emergency care, healthcare training, and also medical knowledge dissemination. Blue Hills Virtual Seminar is a platform that allows healthcare professionals to discuss current management updates of different health-related topics. So we present virtual seminars every week, usually on Thursdays, and to all the participants, you can feel free to join the future webinars. And if you would like to access previous Blue Hills virtual seminars that you have missed, you can get them on our YouTube channel. And if you want the certification, you can get them on the Blue Hills CPD website, which I'll be putting in the chat box. And for today's virtual seminar, again, I would love to thank Professor Gzacho. It was an amazing presentation and also wonderful Ethiopia. So we will be putting the link to the quiz in the chat box, and those of you who score 60% and above on the quiz will be eligible to receive a 1.5 CEU CPD certificates, and we will be sending out the certifications on Monday. So please wait patiently. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mati. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Heno, and thank you, Blue Hills Ethiopia, for the collaboration partnership in making this webinar possible. So as we come to the end of our session, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for attending today's webinar. A very special thank you to our esteemed speaker, Professor Gzacho, for generously sharing your time, expertise, and perspectives with us. Vitamin D plays a crucial role in connecting clinical knowledge with practical decision making. We hope today's discussion has provided you with valuable insights and tools to enhance patient care in your practice. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our future webinars. So we will drop the link to the question from Blue Hills Ethiopia for getting the CU point in the chat box. And if you have any further questions, so regarding our products, vitamin D reagents, or additional support, please feel free to reach out, and we'll also share an email address in the chat box for the follow-up. Goodbye, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for Professor Gzacho. Thank you for your wonderful the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. I always have.
Yeah.
Beautiful and you. Thank you.
Yeah. See you.
See you. Thank you, Mati. Dr. Mati, thank you.
Thank you, Professor.